The Zephyrian scout ship Whisper of Stars descended through Earth's atmosphere with the grace of a falling leaf, its crystalline hull refracting the morning sunlight into prismatic ribbons. Commander Veltar had expected to find another primitive world, perhaps Stone Age hunters or early agriculturalists. What he hadn't expected was the elderly human standing in a field of golden grain, leaning on what appeared to be a crude farming implement. Fascinating, Veltar murmured to his science officer, Kexara. The bipedal appears to be cultivating sustenance crops using rudimentary tools. Note the primitive metalwork on that stick. The human, weathered face lined with decades of sun exposure, calloused hands gripping a well-worn hoe, watched their approach with neither fear nor wonder, but with the patient curiosity of someone who had seen seasons change for 73 years. "Morning," said Thomas Hartwell, adjusting his straw hat. "You folks lost?" The universal translator crackled to life. Veltar's four eyes widened in surprise. You possess linguistic processing capabilities." "I speak English, if that's what you're asking." Thomas set his hoe aside and dusted off his hands. "Coffee's still warm if you want some." Kexara consulted her scanner, antennae twitching with confusion. "Commander, this being shows no signs of advanced neural enhancement or cybernetic implants. How is communication possible?" Thomas chuckled, the sound like wind through wheat. "Son, my granddaughter's been teaching me about computers and such, but I learned to talk the old-fashioned way." He gestured toward his farmhouse. "Come on, you look like you could use a sit-down." The Zephyrians exchanged glances. First contact protocol demanded extensive observation before direct interaction, but something about this human's demeanor suggested no threat. They followed him across the field, their advanced sensors cataloging everything: the precise spacing of crop rows, the optimal soil moisture content, the mathematical efficiency of his irrigation system. "Remarkable," Kexara whispered. "His cultivation techniques are actually quite sophisticated, despite the primitive tools." Inside the farmhouse, Thomas poured coffee from a pot that had seen better decades. The aliens noted the simple wooden furniture, hand-carved and perfectly functional. Family photographs covered one wall, generations of humans in similar settings all bearing Thomas's patient eyes. "So," Thomas said, settling into his favorite chair with a grunt, "what brings you to Earth?" Veltar activated his diplomatic protocols. "We are explorers from the Zephyrian Collective, seeking to catalog primitive civilizations. Your species appears to be in the early agricultural phase of development." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "That's so." He sipped his coffee thoughtfully. "What makes you think we're primitive?" "Your tools?" Kexara interjected, consulting her datapad. "Metal implements shaped by crude forging techniques. Manual labor for cultivation. No visible energy weapons or defensive systems." "Ah." Thomas stood and walked to a cabinet, pulling out what looked like an ancient wrench. "You mean tools like this?" The alien scanners immediately began chirping in confusion. The wrench was emitting impossible energy signatures. That's a quantum resonance calibrator," Veltar stammered. "But it appears to be manually operated?" Thomas grinned. "Built it myself in '98. Needed something to fix the tractor, and the manual said I needed one of these quantum doohickeys. Figured if I could build a carburetor, I could build anything." He opened another drawer, revealing an array of primitive tools that made Kexara's scanner overload: a hammer that manipulated molecular bonds, a screwdriver that could adjust atomic structures, pliers that could bend space-time just enough to reach around corners. "The thing about farming," Thomas explained, polishing the quantum calibrator with a dish towel, "is that you learn to make do with what you've got. When my great-grandfather's thresher broke down in 1943, he didn't have the luxury of ordering replacement parts, so he made them. When my father needed to increase crop yields in the 70s, he didn't wait for agricultural scientists. He studied soil chemistry himself and built what he needed." Veltar's mandibles clicked nervously. "You're saying these are homemade?" "Everything on this farm is," Thomas said with pride. "That irrigation system you scanned? Took me 3 years to figure out how to make water flow uphill, using gravitational field manipulation. The soil enhancer I use breaks down matter at the subatomic level to create perfect growing conditions." Kexara was frantically taking notes. "But your civilization shows no signs of advanced technology. No cities of crystal and light. No orbital platforms?" Thomas looked out his window at the rolling field stretching to the horizon. Why would I need all that? I've got everything I need right here. He paused, then added with a chuckle, though I suppose if someone threatened my land, I'd have to dust off some of the other tools in the barn. The aliens followed his gaze to the weathered barn in the distance. Their scanners detected energy readings that made their ship's weapons look like firecrackers. You see, Thomas continued, returning to his chair, my family's been farming this land for 6 generations. Each of us has added something, improved something, built something better. We might not have your fancy cities or starships, but we've got something else. What's that? Veltar asked, though he was beginning to understand. Thomas smiled, the expression carrying the weight of centuries of human ingenuity and determination. We've got time, patience, and the absolute refusal to let anything, weather, economics, or apparently visitors from space, stop us from taking care of what's ours. As the Zephyrians prepared to leave, their understanding of primitive forever changed. Thomas handed them a small device wrapped in an old cloth. What is this? Kexara asked. Seed storage unit, Thomas replied. Maintains perfect growing conditions for any organic matter, extends shelf life indefinitely, and adapts to any soil conditions on any planet. He shrugged. Figured you might want to try farming yourselves someday. The device was impossibly advanced, representing technology decades ahead of anything in Zephyrian science.
How do we repay such a gift?
Veltar asked. Thomas Hartwell adjusted his hat and picked up his hoe, which his visitors now realized could probably terraform planets if necessary. Just remember, he said, walking back toward his fields, there's more than one way to reach for the stars. As the whisper of stars lifted off, its crew sat in stunned silence. They had come seeking primitive farmers and found master engineers who chose to tend gardens instead of galaxies. In his report, Commander Veltar would write, humans appear primitive only to those who mistake choice for capability. Recommend extreme caution and respect in all future dealings. Back in his field, Thomas Hartwell continued his work, humming an old song his grandfather had taught him, tending to crops with tools that could reshape reality itself. Because sometimes the most advanced thing you can do is grow something beautiful in your own backyard.